people need to do research again. And that's because, like, if you look around, for example, a lot of people just, they believe whatever's put in front of them. Like, especially my generation, and especially in generations before us, they're now getting affected a bit too. And sorry for the stuffiness, by the way. Got allergies. But what I mean by this is there's no independence in people's thoughts, and as they keep growing, especially like for children too, like when they develop, there's a common understanding that they're supposed to develop an idea of their own independent thoughts, which I think school claims it under as critical thinking. Parents claim it as maybe their own political opinion or something like that, right? And when you get to those stages, okay, you get some sort of independence, but you don't really think for yourself. You're still thinking this because that, but you don't actually know that the thing, that reason is right or not. Now, I'm not saying you have to go research for like 5 hours on something, but at least give a couple glances to, oh, is this actually right, or is this someone just straight up lying to me? Yeah. A thing that I found pretty funny, there was one article I read a while ago. It was about how on TikTok it was one of every five, I think, or like it was like one of or four, it might have been four out of every five posts contain misinformation, meaning, to define misinformation, meaning something that would mislead somebody to thinking fact X is true when in reality it's fact Y, but they don't take the time to do it because their attention span is down here. You know what I'm saying? And I find that really interesting since it all kind of collages together. It all just like comes together and makes a big thing. If that makes any sense. So that idea of having individual thought is really a provoking way to say stop being on your phone, right? It's also a really provoking way of saying do something where you're thinking, where you're manually, like, you're using your brain to think, right? Because that, in my opinion, is what teaches you independent thought. And then you get the ability to make judgments based on your own calls. You get the responsibility to also make sure you correct those calls. Because a lot of people they'll accept the power but not the responsibility, right? And especially with today, a lot of people will try to skip the process and go straight to the event. Meaning they'll try to, like, to put it in a business example, they would want to have the $3 billion without having the business part or without working in it. Or maybe even they start up the business, but they don't actually put anything into it. Does that make sense? Like, they'll sit there and they'll, for example, right now, they'll record videos, but they won't actually try to improve the way they speak to their audience. They won't try to see what they're interested in and try to provide value to them. While people that are successful in business, they center their entire thing around valuing the market because the market determines the value of their business. It's a simple one-way street, really. And with that ability to understand that, you become a lot more back to independent thought. You become a lot more independently focused and thinking on, okay, I need to see what other people find valuable, not just me. That requires thinking, right? Where, going back to my TikTok example, the misinformation, reading it doesn't require thinking. And since everyone knows that no, well, for the people that do use TikTok, I don't personally, for many reasons, but this being one of them. But if you use TikTok, even I know, it's just like if I got paid 5 cents every time someone did this, be a billionaire. That's what the CEO of TikTok did. They made you do this. That's all they did. They didn't do anything too special. They just figured out the ability that, oh, people like this, boom, give it to them. Simple. But anyways, minus that. It's just, it also, especially since the things that most people see are the popular things, obviously what we know is that they're not exactly the most correct, usually ever, but it's that ability to understand that and actually act upon it and be like, okay, let me make sure that thing is right. Then you get a much higher quality level of knowledge that you can spread on to other people, and then you can spread that and have that be the quality instead of down here where it currently is, right? And obviously there's a big problem with like mob rule, right? Not saying this because, oh, minorities should rule, right? Because obviously there's whatever. But like it's the idea that if you know anything about U.S. history, you might know that the like during times when they were like debating on voting, or like, yeah, what states should get what power for voting, since like this is when they had slaves and stuff, and then Virginia wanted it based on populace, and then New Jersey wanted it based on like an equal point system, which is basically how the House and the Senate eventually became a thing. But it's the idea of that independent thought that would get these two sides to argue with each other to begin with, right? To make the House and the Senate, which is a very valuable thing to at least to the United States, the power balance and whatnot, right? Because there's another world where the United States becomes independent and George Washington wants to be a monarch. So he decides, instead of setting up the democracy we know of today, he builds a building somewhat like the White House. He simply just lives in it, and he does nothing but tell people what to do, right? But he's a good guy, right? But, oh, he's got that. Oh, it looks like this. Sounds familiar, right? Half the fucking people that watch TikTok do the exact same thing, right? So it's really about this ability to understand your own thought that will help you and us get to a better quality of being as a whole. I mean, that's how we got here, right? Without independent thought, someone wouldn't have thought of the idea of cooking an egg or bashing a rock into wood to make a wooden thing to use to whatever, like a tool. And that's obviously, and that's just a problem that a lot of people are facing today, because, well, I shouldn't even have to say why. You should understand that it is a problem that almost everyone is facing, excluding if you use social media or not. It still affects you, because how like cultural diffusion works, right? You like the five best people, the five people you hang around the most, that type of thing, right? That diffusion of ideas, it eventually becomes a big part of you as the individual. So if you surround yourself with a bunch of individuals that don't take the time to make sure that what they're saying is valuable, correct, and ready to be informative onto you, then I don't think you should take the time to at least do that to them. And if not, and if you can, I would say try to find someone or something that's different, right? So this idea of independent thought, it made me really interested because it shows how a lot of people, like average people in older generations, would have independent thought all the time, right? I remember hearing this story from my own mom. My great grandpa he said that water would end up becoming bottled and like priced to you, right? Like he'd end up having to pay for water, is what he's saying. Because at the time, you could just go like kind of get water. It's water, right? So it's the idea of that independent thought that you could put out into the world and help understand, does this provide value to people? Do people understand your thought? Or do they just not care? Is it not important to them? Does it not make any sense? Or you get the rare circumstance where they actually don't understand what's going on, which is what's happening today. A lot of people just don't understand what's going on. They haven't picked up their head and like observed, right? Obviously it's a lot deeper than the phone. It's a lot of here because especially like media platforms, they're often psychology traps, as we all know. They zap your attention, and meaning that they trigger like dopamine levels in your brain. So then you get the feeling of, oh, I want to. And then you also get epinephrine, which I believe, if I'm correct, dopamine's like the happy molecule. The molecule is like, oh, but not like fulfillment. Fulfillment's like more serotonin, if you know what that is. But and dopamine's more like happiness from like pleasure, right? More like hedonism for the sake of this conversation. And epinephrine is like the buddy to it, and it's a buddy to like both of them, and it's like a focus buddy. It's like, oh, I'm gonna be focused on recording this video. Oh, I'm gonna be focused on watching this for the next hour, right? So it's really important to harness that ability to be yours and not someone else's. So that way you don't easily end up getting essentially, sounds crazy to say. Like I thought I'd never say this, but it's literally just like mind control. Like out of those fucking those like weird sci-fi movies that people watch. I don't watch sci-fi movies, but it's like it's that level that's actually being prevalent in our society today. So I guess there's one thing that you should take away from this video is that you should start the practice of thinking about things for yourself and be able to do so importantly while not being stressed, because when you're stressed you can't think as well. You rely more on the dopamine thing. Go back, right? So it's important to have your own independent thought or thoughts, make that a habit, and then spread that to other people, so that way the quality of knowledge can become higher and not just the quality of technology and control. Have a good one.